More than 1 in 3 Americans still believe humans were created in their present form and did not evolve from earlier life.
Too many!
Not that they have questions or that they're unsure or they missed a biology class. Just flat out, humans did not evolve. In 2026. Fantastic. We can land rockets on drone ships in the middle of the ocean. We can edit DNA. We can look billions of years into the past with cool space telescopes. You carry a phone in your pocket, powerful enough to run a small country, ruin your attention span, and start a family argument in under 30 seconds. And still, somehow, millions of people hear the word evolution and immediately go, well, if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? Really? That's like asking if Americans came from Europeans, why are there still Europeans? That's not a gotcha. That's just you loudly misunderstanding ancestry. And that's what we're talking about today. Not the Facebook version of evolution, not the bumper sticker version, not the my cousin watched a guy in sunglasses yell into a truck dashboard version. The actual theory, what it says, for real. What it does not say. Why scientists accept it. Why so many people apparently reject it. And why the most common arguments against it fall apart the second they run into that pesky little thing called evidence. Which I know, I guess, is inconvenient. Evidence has a track record of doing that. Welcome back to the Weary Millennial. I know, new name, sorry. I'm running a couple different channels, so just trying to keep myself from getting confused. But here we're trying to bring back a little common sense, dive into science, history, some cool stories, all with a dash of sarcasm. And hey, if your back hurts from sleeping funny or sneezing wrong, you're definitely in the right place. So if you like this kind of content, hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment. It really helps us out. But all right, let's get into it.
Okay, let's go explain evolution to the monkeys.
Before the comment section starts warming up the torches, let's get something straight right off the bat. I am not attacking religion. I am not attacking Christians. I'm not attacking people who have honest questions. Questions are good. I say that all the time. Questions are the whole reason science exists. What I'm talking about are the people who confidently reject evolution while proving, sentence by sentence, that they have no idea what evolution actually is. Because if you're going to fight something, at least fight the real thing. That's my issue. Not faith, not people asking questions, confidence without comprehension. That magical internet combo where somebody says, do your own research, and then says something that proves they don't even know what the word research means. Evolution is not controversial among biologists or geneticists or paleontologists. It's not controversial among people who study life for a living, which, I don't know, feels relevant. Outside of science, though, it's a completely different story. Evolution becomes one of the most emotionally loaded topics on Earth. Not mainly due to evidence, almost never due to evidence, but due to identity and worldview and childhood teaching and tribal loyalty, I guess. The stuff people wrap around themselves so tightly that a fact starts to feel like a personal attack. And humans are notoriously terrible at separating evidence from identity. All of us, religious people, non-religious people, political people, sports people, everyone. Tell someone their favorite football team sucks and watch their brain turn into a fireworks stand. Especially you Cowboys fans. I said what I said. Tell someone that their political party is wrong and they'll argue until their phone battery dies and then some. Tell someone that their religion might be mistaken about human origins and there's a solid chance that they're probably going to say you're going to burn in the pits of hell forever. I've heard that a lot, which is always a fun escalation. Good morning. You're going to hell. Cool. Good chat. The important distinction is this. The conflict is not science versus religion. Millions of religious people accept evolution. There are Christian biologists and doctors and geneticists, Christian science teachers. There are Jews, Muslims, Catholics, Protestants, and people of all faiths all over the world who accept evolution without their entire worldview catching fire. The conflict is science versus literal claims about the natural world that do not match the evidence. That's different, and it matters. If someone says Genesis contains spiritual truth, moral truth, theological truth, that's one conversation, and that's totally fine. Science doesn't really have much of anything to say about that. But if someone says all humans came from one couple a few thousand years ago, or, every land animal alive today descended from animals on one wooden boat after a global flood, now we're making claims about the physical world, claims about biology and geology and genetics, claims about animals, fossils, DNA, population history, and ecology. Those claims can and should be tested. And once you test them, things will get uncomfortable fast. That's not my fault. Talk to the evidence. One reason evolution gets people so fired up is that it knocks humans off the pedestal, as it should. People love being special. We want to believe that we are the center of the story, that the universe was built for us. Everything was leading up to us. That somehow we're the main characters. Evolution walks in, kicks the door open, and says, "You're just animals." And some of y'all are making that case a little more strongly than others. Very intelligent animals, for the most part, very creative animals, very strange animals. Animals that invented language and music, medicine, spaceflight, nuclear weapons, reality television, and leaf blowers. But animals nonetheless. We are part of nature. We're not separate from it. We're not above it. We are part of it. For some people, for some reason, that feels insulting. For me, it's incredible. The idea that every living thing on Earth is connected through deep time is one of the most amazing things humans have ever discovered, honestly. Every tree, every whale, every bird, mushroom, flower, every person you love, every person you can barely tolerate, all connected through billions of years of shared ancestry. That is not depressing. That is beautiful. It means that life survived asteroid impacts, ice ages, volcanic catastrophes, mass extinctions, climate shifts, predators, disease, starvation, competition, and enough bad luck to make the universe look actively hostile. And here we are, a bunch of anxious primates with smartphones arguing in comment sections. So no, evolution does not make humanity meaningless. It makes humanity part of a much, much bigger story. But before we get into the deeper stuff, we have to kill the dumbest misconception first. No, evolution does not say humans came from modern monkeys. Seriously, stop saying that. The by far most famous anti-evolution argument is also one of the absolute worst. If humans came from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys? And I know some of you have heard that and thought, yeah, good point. It's not a good point.
You sound so dumb right now.
It is a bad point with a confidence issue. Evolution does not say humans came from modern monkeys. Not now, not ever. That's literally never been said. It's never been the claim. What evolution does say is that humans and modern monkeys share common ancestors if you go back far enough. Those are completely different statements. Think about your family tree. You and your cousin share grandparents. You did not come from your cousin, and your cousin did not come from you. You both came from the same ancestral line. Please do not make this weirder than it needs to be. It's the same concept. Humans, chimpanzees, gorillas, orangutans, modern monkeys are all branches of a much older family tree. Some branches went one direction, some went another. Over millions and millions of years, populations change. They split and they adapt. They become different in different ways. That's not a straight ladder. It's a branching tree. So asking if humans came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys, makes about as much sense as asking if I have cousins, why do I still exist? Relatives can exist at the same time. This is not advanced biology. This is family reunion math. And yet somehow we're still struggling. The deeper problem is that a lot of people imagine evolution like Pokemon or something. One creature suddenly transforms into another creature. Monkey becomes a human. Fish becomes a lizard. Dinosaur lays an egg and out pops a chicken sandwich. That's not evolution. That's Saturday morning television in the 90s. Evolution clearly works at the population level. Individuals do not evolve. Populations evolve. You don't wake up one morning as a different species. Your dog does not give birth to a cat. A chimpanzee does not give birth to a human. A fish does not look around and say, you know what, I'm going to become a horse. Although, honestly, respect the ambition. Tiny inherited differences accumulate across generations. Some of them might help, some might hurt, some of them might be neutral and not really do anything. But over time, those differences build. The population split, environments change, natural selection favors certain traits over others. Genetic drift changes population in other ways. Eventually, two populations can become so different that they no longer interbreed. That is speciation. It's not magic. It's not a monkey turning into a man on a Tuesday. Population change over time. That's it. And before somebody says, well, we've never seen one animal turn into another animal. Of course you haven't. No one says that either. I've also never personally watched the Grand Canyon form. I've never watched a mountain range rise out of the ground. I've never sat in my driveway and observed continental drift over a long weekend. Some processes take longer than a human lifespan. Again, you're not the center of the universe. That does not make them fake. Most, if not all, anti-evolution arguments attack a version of evolution that scientists do not believe or claim. They're not wrestling with the real theory. They are shadowboxing a straw monkey. And once you understand what evolution actually claims, the next objection usually appears immediately. Yeah, well, it's just a theory. So, let's talk about that one. Evolution is just a theory. Every science teacher within a 50-mile radius just clenched their jaw so hard that they probably cracked a molar. The problem is not the word theory. The problem is that people use the word in one way in normal conversation, and scientists use it another way. If I say, I have a theory that my toddler hid the TV remote, what I mean is I'm totally guessing and I'm about to find it in a shoe or hidden in a couch cushion or something. That's everyday language. In science, a theory is not a guess. A scientific theory is a broad explanation supported by evidence and repeatedly tested. It is not bottom shelf speculation. It is not just some random guy had a thought. It sits near the top of the scientific evidence ladder. Facts and theories are not enemies. Facts are observations. Theories explain observations. It is a fact that objects fall toward Earth. The theory of gravity explains why. It is a fact that diseases spread. Germ theory explains how. It is a fact that species change over time. Evolutionary theory explains the mechanisms. When someone says, evolution is just a theory, or gravity is just a theory, what they usually mean is, I don't know what the word theory means in science, without actually knowing that's what they're saying. It's not the mic drop that you think it is. Science does not deal in absolute certainty the way that mathematics does. Science deals in evidence, not vibes or tradition, not what my uncle said, actual evidence. The question is and should be what explanation best fits the evidence. And after more than 165 years of testing, arguing, digging, sequencing, comparing, challenging, and trying to break it, evolution remains the best explanation we have for the diversity of life. Not because Darwin was some kind of biology messiah, not because universities are hiding the truth, not because scientists are terrified of alternate ideas. It's quite the opposite. Scientists love overturning major ideas. Do you have any idea how famous the person who disproves evolution would become? Like, instantly a legend. Textbooks rewritten, lectures are changed overnight, research programs redirected, Nobel-level fame. That person would not be silenced. They would be booked on every podcast in the known universe. And somehow still the first one would be Joe Rogan for 3 hours. There's no secret volcano meeting where biologists decide what everyone is allowed to believe, which is a shame, honestly. That sounds kind of awesome. Evolution remains accepted for a very simple reason. It keeps working. Genetics supports it. Fossils support it. Comparative anatomy supports it. Embryology supports it. Biogeography supports it. Observed evolution supports it. Medicine depends on it. At some point, saying it's just a theory is like saying gravity is just a theory. Technically also true. Completely misses the entire point. The word theory does not make evolution weak. It means the evidence became strong enough to build a whole explanatory framework around it. But enough definitions, let's get into the actual evidence. Starting with genetics. This is where evolution stops being a neat idea and becomes an absolute wrecking ball. If you reject evolution, genetics is where the room starts getting a little uncomfortable. Not due to attitude, due to math. DNA does not care about your feelings. It does not care what your pastor said. It does not care what some guy named Patriot Eagle 1776 on YouTube said. DNA just sits there quietly ruining bad arguments. You know, like rude little molecules. Scientists do not accept evolution because Darwin had a cool idea. Darwin didn't even know what DNA was. He did not know what genes were. He had no idea how traits were physically passed from one generation to the next. When Darwin published On the Origin of Species in 1859, modern genetics did not exist. One of the strongest bodies of evidence for evolution came after Darwin. And it could have destroyed his whole theory. But it didn't. It made it stronger, like much stronger. Let's start with human chromosome 2. Humans have 46 chromosomes. Chimpanzees have 48. Now, if humans and chimpanzees share a common ancestor, that difference needs an explanation. And we have one. Human chromosome 2 looks like two ancestral ape chromosomes fused together. And not vaguely, or like kind of if you squint at it, it has the fingerprints of a fusion event. Chromosomes normally have telomeres at the ends. Human chromosome 2 has telomere-like sequences in the middle. Chromosomes normally have one centromere. Human chromosome 2 has evidence linked to two ancestral centromeres, with one no longer functioning like the other. That's exactly what you would expect if two ancestral chromosomes fused. It's kind of like finding weld marks where two pieces of metal were joined. Evolution predicts common ancestry. Common ancestry predicts some explanation for the chromosome number difference. The scientists go out and look for the evidence. They find fusion evidence sitting right there. That's not a minor detail. That is a smoking chromosome. That's where the there's no evidence starts sounding ridiculous. What exactly would count as evidence? Does the chromosome need to wear a name tag? Now, zoom out. Humans and chimpanzees share a huge amount of DNA. Depending on how you measure it, you'll often hear roughly 98 to 99%. And every time that comes up, someone immediately says something like, yeah, well, humans share DNA with bananas too. There's always the one banana guy. Congratulations, you discovered that living things share biological building blocks. That is not a gotcha. That is biology just doing biology stuff. The important part is not merely that we share DNA. The important part is the pattern. The closer species are related, the more genetic similarity we generally see. Obviously. It's exactly what common ancestry predicts. But the evidence gets even better. Let's talk about pseudogenes. Pseudogenes are basically broken genes. Think of them like little typos sitting in your genetic code. A gene, used to do something, now it's damaged or disabled or no longer functioning the same way. And the interesting part, humans and other primates often share the same broken genes in the exact same locations. Not similar mistakes, the exact same mistakes. Imagine two books with the same typo on the same page, in the same sentence. You would not say, wow, two authors independently made the exact same mistake in the exact same place. What a miracle. You'd probably say they must have come from the same source. It's the same thing with shared genetic errors, the same typo on the same page from the same family history. And then, of course, that brings us right to endogenous retroviruses. Hopefully I said that right. ERVs. Yeah, it sounds a little made up, but science names everything like it was invented by someone allergic to marketing. Endogenous retrovirus sounds like a villain in a bad Marvel sequel. That's a terrible joke, because it really doesn't. Viruses sometimes insert genetic material into DNA. Very rarely, those insertions happen in reproductive cells and get passed down to future generations. Scientists have found that humans and other primates share many of these viral insertions in the same locations in the genome. Think about the odds. It's like two cars having the exact same scratches in the exact same places and the same dents, the same cracked windshield, the same weird stain in the back seat. At some point, the simplest explanation is shared history. That's not coincidence or magic, it's just shared history. That's the pattern over and over and over again. Not one clue, thousands. Genetics, fossils, anatomy, geography, development, observed evolution. Independent lines of evidence pointing in the exact same direction. That's why there's no evidence for evolution is just such a garbage argument. All that means is I've not looked at the evidence, or I was told not to trust the science before I even attempted to understand it. You're not missing the evidence. You're ducking it like a dodgeball. And genetics is not even the only problem for evolution deniers. Fossils have definitely entered the chat. One of the most famous and more common anti-evolution lines is, "Where's the missing link?" That usually delivered with the confidence of someone who thinks every paleontologist on Earth forgot to look down. Like, come on, good catch, Facebook guy. Nobody thought about the fossils. The question sounds reasonable at first. No, it doesn't. If evolution happened, shouldn't we find fossils showing forms between major groups? Yeah, we should. And guess what? We do. A lot. The problem is not that transitional fossils are missing. The problem is that every time scientists find one, critics move the goalposts again. At this point, the goalposts need a passport. Let's talk about Tiktaalik. And I'm going to butcher some of these, so please forgive me. I'll put them on the screen so you can just read them and go look them up yourself. Tiktaalik lived about 375 million years ago. Scientists expected that somewhere between fully aquatic fish and early land vertebrates, there should be some transitional form. Creatures that still looked fish-like, but had features useful for shallow water and mud flats and eventually life on land. And then scientists found Tiktaalik. It had scales and gills, clear fish characteristics, but it also had a flexible neck and stronger ribs, primitive wrist-like structures, limb bones capable of supporting weight. Not a modern fish, not a modern land animal, something clearly in between. You know, the thing that kept saying does not exist. It's a little awkward. And Tiktaalik was not found randomly. Science used evolutionary predictions to search rocks of the right age in the right environment in the right part of the world. They predicted where transitional fossils might be, and then they found one. That is not luck. That is predictive power. And predictive power matters. A scientific theory that helps you find things before you find them is not weak. It is doing work. And then there's Archaeopteryx. Archaeopteryx lived around 150 million years ago. It had feathers like birds, but it also had teeth, clawed fingers, and a long bony tail, traits associated with dinosaurs. It is a beautiful transitional fossil. And yes, birds are dinosaurs. Not birds come from dinosaurs in the loose, casual sense. Birds are living dinosaurs. Just like humans are mammals, that's how classification works. I don't make the rules, I just enjoy the tantrums. Every time I say birds are dinosaurs, someone gets weirdly offended like I kicked a chicken. Just relax, the chickens are fine. It's just your worldview that's limping. Now, what about the whales? Whale evolution is one of my favorite examples in the fossil record. Modern whales live fully in the water. Clearly, that's hopefully not being debated. but their ancestors did not. Scientists have found fossils showing whale ancestors transitioning from land-dwelling mammals into aquatic animals. I don't even know if I want to attempt to say these words, so I'll probably just put them on the screen. Pakicetus, Ambulocetus, Rhodiocetus, Basilosaurus, and eventually modern whales. You can see changes in the limbs, in the skulls, changes in the nostril position, changes in swimming adaptations, and modern whales still carry traces of that past. Some have tiny vestigial pelvic bones. Why would a whale need pelvic bones? Evolution has an answer. They descended from land mammals. The fossil record supports it. The anatomy supports it. The genetics support it. Everything points in the exact same direction. And meanwhile, the anti-evolution answer is usually nuh-uh, but just louder. And then we get to us, human evolution. This is where people get especially touchy. Nobody minds being related to whales. Whales are majestic. People get weird when you mention apes. Suddenly everyone becomes a genetics expert. Here's what the fossil record does not show. It does not show one fossil that is half monkey and half human. That is not what evolution predicts. What we find are multiple hominin species spread across millions of years. Australopithecus, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, Denisovans, and eventually us. Different brain sizes, different skeletal structures, different tools, different adaptations. Again, not a ladder, a branching tree. For some reason, people imagine this like monkey, half monkey, caveman, modern man, done. Reality is messier and far more interesting than that. It branches. There's dead ends, cousins, extinction events, survivors. We are one branch that made it so far. Give social media another decade or two. We'll see what happens. So when someone asks, where are all the transitional fossils? The answer is everywhere. Tiktaalik, Archaeopteryx, whale ancestors, human ancestors, horse evolution, elephant evolution, countless others. Asking where the transitional fossils are is like standing in the middle of a forest asking where all the trees went. Like, dude, you're touching bark. Look around. The fossil record is not perfect. Of course it isn't. Fossilization is relatively rare. Most organisms die, rot, get eaten, scatter, dissolve, or vanish without leaving a trace. The fact that we have as much fossil evidence as we do is already pretty ridiculous. But even with an incomplete record, the pattern is very clear. Life changes, life adapts, life branches. And every new discovery keeps filling in more of the picture. And yeah, now some critics will say, okay, well, maybe fossils look that way, but nobody has ever observed evolution. And that's pretty funny too, because yeah, we observe evolution a lot. And you probably watched it happen on the news. Not only have we observed evolution, we observe it constantly. The issue is that people expect evolution to look like a monkey giving birth to a human. Again, cartoon. That's dumb. Evolution works through populations over generations. Observed evolution means measurable genetic change in populations over time. And we see that all the time. Start with antibiotic resistance. That's not theoretical. It's not ancient history. That's happening right now in every hospital, in every country, every single day. Antibiotics kill bacteria. But sometimes bacteria have mutations or resistance mechanisms that help some of them survive. Those survivors reproduce. Their descendants inherit the resistance. Over time, resistant strains become more and more common. That is evolution. It's not a metaphor. It's not a belief. And that's not Darwin worship. It's a measurable biological process. Hospitals are not fighting metaphors. Antibiotic resistance is such a serious problem that doctors and researchers spend enormous amounts of time and money trying to stay ahead of it. If evolution is fake, modern medicine has some serious explaining to do. And I would pay some good money to watch that press conference. Now let's talk about all y'all's favorite subject, COVID. I know, nobody wants to talk about it. I don't either. I'm tired of just saying or hearing the word. But think about what actually happened. And we're not talking about conspiracies or it came from here. The virus appeared. Where it came from or who did, I don't care. The virus appeared. And then variants emerged. You had Alpha and Delta and Omicron and several others. Each carried genetic changes. Some spread more efficiently, some faded, some dominated. Scientists tracked the changes through sequencing. What exactly do people think that was? The virus was not rebranding itself for engagement. That was evolution, mutation, inheritance, selection, a population change. You all watched it happen in real time while wiping down groceries like we were starring in the world's dumbest apocalypse movie. Then, of course, you got pesticide resistance. Farmers spray pesticides. Most insects die. A few survive. Those survivors reproduce. Their offspring inherit the resistance. Over time, that population becomes harder to kill. Then the farmers need another tool. That's been going on for decades. Ask any farmer. That's nothing new either. It's the exact same concept. Selection, pressure, survival, reproduction, population change. One of the coolest examples that I learned about while researching this video was the peppered moth. It's a classic example, apparently. During the Industrial Revolution in England, pollution darkened trees and surfaces. Light-colored moths used to blend in better, and after pollution darkened the environment, dark moths blended in better. Birds ate the ones that stood out. Dark moths became more common. And then later, when the pollution decreased, the trend reversed itself. That's natural selection in action. And yeah, some people will say, well, small changes happen, but that's not real evolution. That's exactly what evolution predicts. Small changes over long stretches of time. Nobody claims a wolf gave birth to a whale. Nobody claims that a fish sneezed and became a horse. The whole point is gradual accumulation. When someone accepts small-scale evolution but rejects large-scale evolution, they're basically saying, I believe pennies exist, but dollars are impossible. That's not skepticism, that's math with a head injury. A dollar is just a lot of pennies. Large evolutionary changes are just many smaller changes stacked across deep time. Mutation, inheritance, selection, adaptation, speciation, population change. These are not imaginary processes. They are observed and measured and tested and documented. So the real question is not, is there evidence? There is. The real question is, why do people refuse to look at it honestly? And that brings me to the fun, easily agreeable topic that no one gets upset about. Creationism. More specifically, literal Adam and Eve. All right. Before anybody panic scrolls to the comments, this is not a video about whether God exists. This is not a video about whether faith has value. It's not even a video about whether Genesis contains theological meaning. Different conversation, worth having, always fun to discuss amongst friends. But we're talking about a specific factual claim, that all humans alive today literally descended from one pair of humans, in this case Adam and Eve, a few thousand years ago. As theology, people can believe whatever they want. As biology, we have some problems. The biggest problem is clear: genetics. If all humanity came from two people in the recent past, human DNA should reflect that. It does not. Humans carry a huge amount of genetic variation, immune system variation, inherited traits, family lineages, population differences, ancient genetic markers. That diversity did not appear overnight. It reflects a long history of populations, not two people, large populations, interbreeding populations, splitting populations, migrating populations, populations with thousands of individuals, not one couple trying to populate Earth like a very awkward biology assignment. And no, I'm not drawing that family tree. If humanity had passed through a bottleneck of only 2 individuals a few thousand years ago, we would be able to see a massive genetic signature of that event. We don't. Now, someone will say, well, God created Adam and Eve with perfect genetics, or God built all the diversity into them. Okay, that is a theological answer. Fine. That's not a scientific one. That answer is not drawn from any form of evidence. It's added to protect the already established conclusion. That distinction matters. And science will ask, well, what does the evidence show? Apologetics often asks, how do we defend the answer that we already have? Those are not the same process. And then, of course, there's the family problem. If Adam and Eve were the first humans, where did everyone else come from? Cain and Abel do not magically populate a planet. At some point, descendants have to reproduce with siblings, nieces, nephews, cousins, or some other extremely close relative. There's no clean way around that. Every time this comes up, somebody says early humans had perfect genetics and it wasn't an issue. Maybe, but where's the evidence for that? Not the assumption or the sermon, and not the I feel like that solves the argument, like the actual evidence. That's the standard that creationists demand from everyone else, so let's use the same standard. If genetics is reliable in medicine, reliable in forensics and agriculture and paternity testing, it's reliable in inherited disease research and sequencing genomes, why does it suddenly become unreliable when it points toward common ancestry? That's just convenient. This is where the issue becomes methodology. How do we decide what is true? Do we follow evidence where it leads, or do we start with a conclusion and build defenses around it? Those are different roads, and only one of them is science. And if literal Adam and Eve creates problem, then Noah's Ark kicks the door open with a clipboard full of logistical nightmares. So yeah, let's talk about Noah's Ark. Because apparently we're doing boat math now. And same distinctions as before. If someone treats Noah's Ark as a theological story, symbolic story, a moral story, fine. That's not what I'm addressing, and I don't care. I'm addressing the claim that a global flood literally happened a few thousand years ago, and all modern land animals descended from the animals aboard one wooden boat. If that is the claim, we have issues. So, of course, let's start with the animals. A lot of animals. Creationists often say, Noah didn't bring every species, he brought each kind. Okay, what's a kind? Seriously, define it. Ken Ham. Kind is not a scientific classification. It's not species or genus or family or order. It is a flexible word that seems to expand or shrink depending on what problem needs solving. When arguing against evolution, kind gets pretty narrow. Dogs stay dogs, cats stay cats, no big changes. But when it's time to fit animals on the ark, kind gets suspiciously broad. Suddenly, one cat kind becomes lions, tigers, leopards, jaguars, cheetahs, mountain lions, lynxes, bobcats, and fluffy. That raises an obvious question. If one ancestral cat population diversified into all those different cats after the flood, what exactly do you think evolution is? They rejected evolution to begin with and then invented a speedrun version of it. You do not get to reject evolution and then accidentally reinvent it because your boat is out of parking spaces. Then, of course, we got to get into the logistical argument. Imagine you're Noah. You have thousands of animals, food, water, waste, disease control, predators, prey, ventilation, temperature, insects, parasites, cleaning, storage, all handled by 8 people? Really? I don't know if you've ever taken care of a single puppy, but it's exhausting. Now add hippos. The ark starts sounding less like a miracle and more like the world's least funded zoo. And then, of course, geography. How did the kangaroos get back to Australia? Seriously asking that question. After the flood, did they just start hopping across the Middle East and Asia and Indonesia, across the water? No populations left behind, not a single fossil along the way, no evidence whatsoever. Was there some kind of marsupial carnival cruise back home? What about koalas? Koalas eat eucalyptus leaves almost exclusively. So now we need post-flood animal migration and some kind of catering plan. And then, of course, fish. You know, a global flood sounds simple until you, remember that fish existed. Freshwater fish, saltwater fish. Most of those types are pretty picky about salinity. And that's not them being dramatic. That's biology. A worldwide flood would massively disrupt salinity levels. So how do freshwater ecosystems survive, or marine ecosystems? How do coral reefs survive? How does delicate aquatic food chains survive? And then plants. Most plants don't love being submerged under a global ocean. Many, if not most, would die. Ecosystems would inevitably collapse. So where is the global ecological reset? Where's the worldwide geological signature from a recent flood? Where's the evidence that every ecosystem on Earth restarted a few thousand years ago? We do not see that. We see continuous geology, continuous ecosystems, continuous evolutionary histories. When these problems come up, the answer usually just becomes God performed a miracle. Animals survived by miracle. Food, fish, plants, the ark functioned by miracle. At some point, I have to ask, are we doing science or are we just using miracle as a theological duct tape? You can believe in miracles all you want. Knock yourself out. That is your right. But miracles are not scientific explanations. Science studies natural processes. A miracle, by definition, is outside normal natural processes. So stop trying to drag miracles into science class wearing a fake mustache. Faith and science can coexist, but pretending supernatural rescue patches are scientific mechanisms? No, that dog won't hunt. And now we've reached the part where someone will accuse me of saying scientists are smarter than everyone else. And no, that's not the argument. There are brilliant religious people. I'm sure there's brilliant creationists, brilliant atheists, brilliant scientists. There's also probably plenty of scientists who believe some pretty kooky things. Religious people who understand science perfectly well, and people with advanced degrees who can't operate a printer. Intelligence is not the issue. Methodology is the issue. How do you decide what is true? Science is not just facts. It's not just lab coats. And it's not just expensive microscopes and people saying Latin words with confidence. Science is a process. Observe, question, hypothesize, test, predict, measure, revise, and most importantly, allow yourself to be wrong. That is science's superpower. Science can update. People mock science for changing its conclusion, but that's the entire point. A system that cannot update is not strong. It is stuck. Imagine if your GPS refused to recalculate because it was emotionally committed to the original route. You'd still be circling a Chili's in 2009. Science changes when better evidence appears. That is its strength. Creationism often works differently. It starts with the answer. Genesis is literally true. Then the evidence gets interpreted through that lens. Now the goal is not to discover what is true. The goal is to defend what has already been decided. That's a huge difference. Let's do a little thought experiment. Suppose scientists discovered evidence tomorrow that completely destroyed the evolutionary theory. Not weakened it, like destroyed it. What would happen? Scientists would lose their minds. The person who found it would become one of the most famous scientists in history. Like we talked about earlier, textbooks rewritten, courses updated, research redirected, careers would be made. The discovery would be celebrated, tested, challenged, fought over, and eventually accepted if the evidence held up. Science rewards people who overturn major ideas. Now ask the same question from any other religious side. What evidence would convince a committed young Earth creationist that Genesis is not a literal scientific account of human origins? What fossil or genetic discovery or geological finding or observation If the answer is nothing, then we're not doing science. We're dealing with a belief protected from evidence. If nothing can prove you wrong, you're not investigating. You're just guarding a conclusion. And I think that's a decent segue, not really, kind of a terrible one, into falsifiability. Terrible word. Important idea, though. A scientific claim has to be capable of being wrong. If I say, if I drop this pen, it will fall, that is testable. If the pen floats away, something interesting just happened. Evolution makes testable predictions. Genetic relationships, transitional fossils, anatomical patterns, geographic distribution, embryological similarities, nested hierarchies, observed populations over time. Over and over, those predictions are confirmed. Creationism clearly struggles here. When evidence creates a problem, the answer can always be, God did it that way. As theology, okay, fine. As science, that explains everything and nothing. If I ask, why is the sky blue? And someone answers, because God wanted it blue, fine, maybe. But that does not explain atmospheric scattering or predict anything. It does not lead to new discoveries or teach us about the mechanisms. Science wants mechanism. How does it happen? What process caused it? What predictions can follow? What evidence would change our minds? That is why creationism fails as science. Not due to persecution, not due to anti-religion bias, not due to secret atheist cabal hiding fossils under a volcano. It fails as science because it does not outperform evolution. It does not explain the evidence better. It does not make better predictions. It does not allow itself to be wrong, and that matters. And clearly, after calling out Adam and Eve and Noah's Ark, the next argument always comes out to be, okay, what about complexity? The eye, DNA, the cell, the human brain, the whole obviously designed argument. And I get why that one feels convincing sometimes, but let's deal with it. The argument goes something like, look at the human eye, look at DNA or the complexity of life. Surely something that complex and complicated had to be designed. And I understand the emotional pull. Life is incredibly complex. DNA is mind-blowing. The human brain is absolutely ridiculous. The eye is amazing. The small cell, it's a tiny biochemical city. Complexity is real. The question is what explains it. I've seen this a number of times with creationists. They use the analogy, saying life evolved is like saying a tornado went through a junkyard and assembled a Boeing 747. A sentence so wrong it needs a seatbelt. It sounds, devastating until you realize it has absolutely nothing to do with evolution. Evolution does not say complex life assembled instantly by pure random chance. It does say that complexity accumulated gradually through countless small changes across enormous stretches of time, filtered by selection. Tiny steps, repeated, inherited, tested by survival and reproduction, again and again and again. The tornado analogy pretends every step happened at once, and that, again, is not the argument. It's a cartoon made to try and sound smart. That's not even being wrong correctly. I don't know if that made sense, but it sounded right to me. And also, complexity does not automatically prove design. Nature produces complexity constantly. Look at snowflakes or weather systems, river networks, crystal formations, galaxies, ecosystems. No engineer is standing inside a snow cloud assembling each snowflake with tweezers. Although ask some of my chemtrail people, they might make that argument too. Complexity can emerge from natural processes. So if someone wants to argue design, they need evidence of design, not just vibes from complexity. And not that I'm the first to bring this up by any means, but if the human body was designed from scratch, I have notes. Wisdom teeth that often need to be surgically removed, a spine that acts like it was assembled by a committee during a lunch break, knees that betray you if you sleep wrong, a breathing tube and an eating tube sharing space, allowing you to choke to death on a sandwich. That kind of feels like something that beta testing would have caught. The human retina is wired backwards. And of course, everyone knows about the recurrent laryngeal nerve in giraffes' necks that takes a ridiculous detour and comes back up again. I didn't know about it, but it was cool to learn about. Don't even get me started on the prostate or our waste systems. Seriously, if this is the design, I have some customer service questions. Evolution predicts imperfect solutions, good enough solutions, repurposed structures over time, modified anatomy, old systems patched into new uses. Life is not engineered from scratch. It's renovated and modified, jury-rigged. It is an old house with 30 additions, weird plumbing, one light switch that controls nothing, and a bathroom where no bathroom should be. That's exactly what evolution predicts. Not perfection, not clean design, history, constraints and trade-offs and compromises. Good enough to survive long enough to reproduce. That's not elegant, but it's reality. And often, reality is held together with duct tape and spite. And I don't sit here and think that people reject evolution after carefully studying genetics and finding some fatal flaw. Most people have not studied genetics, myself included. Most people reject evolution due to what they think that it means. They think it means that life has no purpose, that humans are not special, morality somehow disappears, and faith collapses. The universe, I guess, just becomes cold and meaningless. I understand why that can feel threatening. Humans want certainty and purpose and meaning. We want to matter. Evolution does not tell us we are the center of the universe. It does not say that humans were the goal. It definitely doesn't say that everything was leading up to us. It just says that we are one branch on a massive tree of life. That can feel humbling, as it should. Maybe even a little scary to some people. But I don't think it makes us less remarkable. I think it makes us more remarkable. Think about it. Life begins billions and billions of years ago. Single-celled organisms. And then complexity over time. Multicellular life. Animals, fish, land vertebrates, mammals, primates, hominins. Now us. And now, we have one species of ape that can study the universe and write music and build telescopes, sequence genomes, land robots on Mars and asteroids, still lose its car keys while holding on to them. That is incredible. The story of life is not small. It is enormous. Life survived mass extinctions multiple times. It adapted, it branched, it recovered, it kept going. A universe that can produce consciousness through natural processes is not boring. That's insane. It is beautiful. That is way more interesting to me than everything popped into existence exactly as it is. Evolution does not rob life of meaning. It removes one kind of certainty. That's not the same thing. Meaning is not destroyed just because humans are not the center of the story. Maybe the story is bigger than us. Maybe that is the whole point. Look at that. Almost inspirational. I'll probably ruin it in a minute. The real danger is not faith. The danger is refusing to let evidence matter. Faith can adapt. Many people of faith already accept evolution. The problem begins when people demand that reality bends around one interpretation. Reality doesn't care. Reality simply is. Now, before we close, I'm going to try to rapid fire a few common moves that you will see in the comments. And even though I'll talk about them here, you're still going to see them in the comments. Evolution violates the second law of thermodynamics. No, it doesn't. The second law applies to closed systems. Earth is not a closed system. We get energy from the sun. The big bright thing that rises and falls. Kind of hard to miss. Local increases in order happen all the time when energy flows through a system. Plants will grow, embryos develop, crystals form, weather systems organize themselves. Your argument is not physics, it is a sentence you memorized. Second, evolution is random. Mutation has random elements. Natural selection is not random. Traits that improve survival and reproduction can become more common. That's not pure chance, that is selection. Words matter. That's annoying, I know. Third, microevolution happens, but macroevolution doesn't. This is the pennies and dollars problem again. Small changes over short time, large changes over long time. You don't get to accept a mechanism, then panic when the clock keeps running. It's like saying I believe in bricks, but not buildings. That's what you sound like. Fourth, there are no transitional fossils. We already covered this. There are tons. Usually what people mean is I will not accept any transitional fossils as transitional. That is not a fossil problem. That is a you problem. The goalposts are in another zip code at that point. Fifth, if evolution is real, why aren't monkeys still turning into humans? Modern monkeys are not trying to become humans. Evolution is not a ladder with humans at the top. Different species adapt to different environments. A chimp is not a failed human. A monkey is not an intern waiting for a promotion. Sixth, evolution can't explain the origin of life. Evolution is about how life changes after life exists. The origin of life is abiogenesis. Related topic, different question. Using abiogenesis to reject evolution is like saying meteorology can't explain where water came from, so hurricanes are fake. No. That's why understanding the actual claim matters. If you don't know what a theory says, you're not qualified to dunk on it. You're not debating science, you're yelling at a scarecrow. Here's something that I don't see a lot of pushback on evolution critics, or I guess I don't think they really understand. Evolution can be challenged. It could be weakened. It could, in principle, be overturned. Science allows that. Find a modern rabbit fossil in Precambrian rock. Find a genetic pattern that completely contradict common ancestry. Find a reliable mechanism showing species do not change over time, or evidence that the nested hierarchy of life is wrong. Find something real and testable and repeatable, powerful enough to explain the evidence better. Scientists would fight about it, then test it, then fight some more, test it again. If it held up, science would change. That's how the process works. It's messy, it's annoying at times, but it's still better than just vibes and making crap up. Creationism does not offer a better model. It does not predict evidence better. It does not explain chromosome 2 better. It does not explain shared pseudogenes better. It does not explain ERVs better. It does not explain nested anatomical patterns better, or transitional fossils, or observed evolution. It mostly says God did it. Again, that may be theology, but it is not science. A scientific model has to do more than preserve a belief. It has to explain, predict, risk being wrong. Creationism does not do that. Evolution does. That is why evolution is science and creationism is not. Not because scientists hate religion, and not because anyone is scared of creationists. It's not a big grand conspiracy. Evolution wins scientifically because it explains the evidence. Simple as that. So why is evolution still controversial? Honestly, I have no idea. But it's not due to a lack of evidence. The evidence is overwhelming. Genetics, fossils, comparative anatomy, embryology, biogeography, observed evolution, medicine, independent fields, same direction, again and again and again. Evolution remains one of the strongest scientific theories ever developed. Not because scientists are secretly protecting it, or because universities or governments are hiding the truth. It remains accepted because it works. It's that simple. It explains what we see. It predicts what we find over and over again. connects the evidence from fields that did not even exist when Darwin was alive. And if you reject it, that's your choice. You do not have to like evolution. You do not have to find it comforting. You don't have to enjoy the implications. But if you're going to reject it, reject the real theory, not the Facebook version, not the meme version, not the church basement PowerPoint version. Just understand it a little and then argue. That's the bare minimum. And please, for the love of common ancestry, stop saying that if we came from monkeys, why are there still monkeys? I'm begging you. Humans did not come from modern monkeys. Humans and modern monkeys share common ancestors. That is not complicated, and that is the whole point. And every time someone repeats that stupid, tired line, somewhere in the universe, Charles Darwin rolls his eyes so hard that he briefly alters the Earth's orbit. Well, that's all I've got for now. And judging by what I just said, I'm pretty sure that the comment section is going to be a calm, thoughtful, and emotionally stable celebration of intellectual honesty. This should be fun. I'll see y'all next time.